Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of Down the Pipe in the CF After Dark era. I'm Levi Stevenson, joined by my good friends Marchie Murdoch and Jordan Harris. For anybody that has not seen us before, you know, this is a long time podcast. Marchie and I have been doing this since 2018, I want to say. Long time. 8 years.
8 years.
We've been going for a while. 8. This is year 8, man.
Wow.
We've been going for a long time. For anybody, you know, since we're on CF After Dark now, not everybody may have seen us or heard of us before. We've got two former players, offense and defense, and we can dive into analysis better than most, better than maybe any. Love to break it down with our experts here. So we are going to start off our off-season previews, our preseason previews. We're going to start today with our depth chart breakdown. We're going to go position by position, talk about each of the guys in the room, and kind of give just who we think if there's a guaranteed starter, maybe some potential starters, and some guys, some depth pieces to look out for that we think are going to kind of figure into the mix type of thing here. So we are going to, we already got a fan here. Marchie caught it. Gets Oklahoma State.
I saw that clip like 3 days ago. It's
baffling.
I always try and figure out how I could have made it more. Always try and whenever I see it, I just be critiquing myself. Like, man, what if I would have did this and pulled the ball even more? What I should have did was continue to fight for the ball and then end up with the ball. I think that was one of the things. I should have ended up with the ball, but
yeah,
it is what it is. I mean, it was a tough game.
Yeah. Just as a fun hypothetical here, if you could have either that catch back or the 2017 Kansas State game down in Manhattan back, which one would you take?
Man, if we win that Oklahoma State game, I mean, the dream is real. Like the dream of playing in Arlington, is real. But I don't know. That K-State game, I would say Oklahoma State just because at that point in time, it really meant something. Like we were playing basically for our lives, to be able to play in the Big 12 title game. And so I probably would have had that back, even though if I'm not mistaken, and obviously I have to look back, but I don't know if we were down 7. So it's not like that would have sealed the game, like the K-State.
Well, and the K-State thing was kind of like out of your control too. It's kind of a weird deal. But anyways, all right. Let's dive into the offense here. There's a couple positions of intrigue here with some lots of different possible starters here. Quarterback is not one of them. Jimmy Rogers put it to rest this week. Now we always kind of thought Jalen Raynor would be the starter, but Jimmy Rogers put it to rest this week at Big 12 Media Days when he was straight up asked who's going to be the starting quarterback. He said Jalen Raynor. We brought him in for a reason. We've gotten to watch him the last 2 years with Iowa State playing Arkansas State, and especially down last year in Jonesboro, he gave us tons of problems. His legs are lethal. Yeah. Now it gets more interesting too with the 5-5 thing, which they said they said at Media Days they're gonna kind of cross that bridge when they get there, as far as like guys having an extra year and all this. But it's hard not to be intrigued by Jalen Raynor having 2 years in the system instead of 1. But going into this season, guys, what do your expectations look like for Jalen Raynor going into this? Having seen him play, knowing what he can do both with his legs and with his arm. Marchie, where do you sit with Jalen Raynor?
I think he's a very talented. I think he's talented as far as the legs, and just the few that I've seen him, he's able to create. Obviously, create and extend plays with his legs. I think his arm is. People would probably say from the outside looking in, like his arm's probably average. I would say it's probably pretty good. I wouldn't say it's like great or, elite, things like that. But I do think he can put the ball in places that our guys can go and get it. The real thing is more just who's around him. How can we make the game easy for him, and stuff like that? So that way, he can kind of bail us out in the end if need be, with his legs and stuff like that. But I am excited that he's here. Every time that he's came from my dad's alma mater, which is Arkansas State. So shout out my dad. But I thought every time that I saw him play, especially last year, I was really impressed. Last year, for the most part, in my opinion, offensively, he extended plays so much, and it really was getting really scary in that game. I think if they would have had a couple more players around him, who knows? They probably would have won that game down there in Jonesboro. So I'm excited to have him with the good guys now. And I think he will surprise some people with how this offense goes this year.
Yeah. And for me, he's my front runner for Big 12 Newcomer of the Year. Because that kid does so much that you can't coach. Like, everything don't be how it's supposed to be, but his feet. And you just got to watch him, because when we played against him last year, you never know if he's scrambling to throw or scrambling to run. And he made a couple plays with his leg, with his arms, just kept our defense off balance, man. And I'm actually looking forward to watching him play.
Mm-hmm. There's a very obvious, like, on-field leadership kind of charisma factor with him too. It's hard. You hate to always make the comparison, but if you're looking at, like, good with his legs on field, good on field leader, off the field leader, guy you look to, accurate, maybe not a huge arm, but good enough arm, accurate. Now, much better runner than the guy I'm comparing him to, but those are many of the same traits that he shares with Brock Purdy. I would argue that Jalen Rayner, that in the right offensive system, can be even a little bit, maybe a touch less gunslingery than Brock tended to be, and will maybe fit into this system in a way where he can be really efficient. And because at Arkansas State they asked him to do a lot. They asked him. They had a really good receiver there last year whose name is totally escaping me right now, but NFL guy, and they basically forced it to him as much as they possibly could. And when you're doing that, when you're in an offense that really has to try to force it to one really good guy, you're gonna have some spot where you throw some picks and things like that. Whereas, this new offensive system with Tyler Roll, obviously we don't know exactly what it looks like yet, but we have an idea that it's probably going to look like nice pro style, very similar to like what the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears run of a Ben Johnson style offense, where lots of easy completions that you can get to good athletes that can then do something with it after the catch. And they've got a lot of guys around him, which we're going to talk about the guys around him here in a little bit, that I think are going to make this really interesting. If you're looking down the rest of the roster, Zane Flores was a guy that came in during spring ball. I know, Jordan, and you and I got to watch him a little bit in person, and kid can spin it. And we thought that's like, maybe there's a chance that he like pushes Jalen a little bit, and they've still got camp to go. And if Zane is incredible and Jalen struggles, then you figure out what you do. But now with getting an extra year of eligibility for all these guys, I kind of wonder what Zane Flores' role looks like going forward. But at least for this season, it seems like he would be pretty solidly the backup here, which, based on what I saw in spring practice, I would feel comfortable with it. Like if Jalen had to come out for a little bit or whatever, that, if they had to put Zane Flores in there, you feel all right about it. But for you guys, if you're one of the playmakers around these quarterbacks, how are you approaching? Like, do you play differently with a mobile quarterback like a Jalen Rayner versus, he's certainly not a statue, but more of a pocket style quarterback with a Zane Flores? And how does that change your job? Now, this is more of a Marchie question, obviously, but specifically, how does that change how you do your job a little bit, or does it at all?
It could depend on. I think with Rayner, right? I gotta remember Jalen. If you know, I've got the roster on my monitor here, so just in case, there's just so many new people.
Corey Rucker, good pull. That's the that was the Arkansas State receiver.
So I think as a coordinator, you don't want to change it up so much that way it messes kind of the flow of what's going on, but you have to play to the strength of who your quarterback is. So if this is a guy that he's not as mobile as I would say as Rayner, then you're going to probably do more plays and designs to where you either can get the ball out of his hands quick, depending on the defense you're playing, or, depending on, like RPO reads, play action, just things like that. I think with Rayner, you want to do those things as well since he can move his legs. But I think the big difference would be just getting him outside of the pocket as well, keeping him on the move, sprint outs, boots, misdirection type of things. That way that in case things aren't open, that he can use his legs and get whatever he can down the field. Whereas with a guy that's maybe not as mobile and more of a pocket, wants to be inside the pocket, you want to design more things to get the ball out of his hands. So that way he's just not a sitting statue for pass rushers to come and tee off on him. So there's different things. And I think within, hopefully most coordinators within each game, you're going to have some plays for, let's just say, if we have the backup QB in, all right, this is the script that I'm going to go with in case something like that happens. So you always have to be prepared for stuff like that. But it is a little different. But at the same time, I think it's just more of how the coach kind of calls the game.
Yeah, and Jordan, so like when you're on the other side of that, you're defending that. I mean, there's obviously like mobile quarterback versus less mobile quarterback. That you have to worry about the legs. But when you're sitting back in coverage and you see Jalen or you see a mobile-ish quarterback either rolling out, booting out, sprinting out, whatever it is, out to the side. Aside from just the threat of the legs, how does it affect, as a linebacker, how does that affect how you're reading his eyes and how you're kind of flowing over to that side of the ball?
Oh, I mean, it all of it gonna depends on what kind of defense you're in. I mean, if you're playing kind of zone or anything like that, the hardest thing to do is when the quarterback break contain, it's the plaster to your man. So that's where you get a lot of kids getting 70, 80 yards up the field scot-free off a scramble. But I mean, you just gotta, with me, just know what my help is and know what the kid like Rayner wants to do. That's why I told you earlier, it's kind of hard because sometimes he scrambled to run and he scrambles to throw too. So you just got to see whichever ones he's planning to do that game. But it's going to be tough. I mean, you just got to go out there and play ball and try to plaster to a man if you're in man and try to pull him up as quick as you can if we're in zone.
And that, and that's an element that I would say this. I mean, not that I would say this had tons of like amazing running quarterbacks. Rocco was a good downhill runner when they ran him off tackle or something like that. And you could get Brock on like a read option type of thing. And obviously Joel's kind of his own thing, but as far as just scrambling ability and improvising and with his legs, especially, Jalen Rayner is one of the most mobile quarterbacks we've seen at Iowa State in a long time. Probably since Brett Meyer, at least, if he's well before you guys even. I'm sure you've heard of him. Brett Meyer, even going back, you could probably argue that Jalen's even more athletic than him, and you'd keep going back to the man, the myth, legend, Seneca Wallace back there. Jalen is that caliber of athlete. And when you have a guy like that can create on his own and do damage with his legs, that's something that Iowa State hasn't had the benefit of in quite some time. And especially when you're at an offensive line spot, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, where the offensive line is going to be meshing a little bit, they're going to be gelling even into the season a little bit. Having a guy that can kind of bail you out a little bit here, once in a while is super valuable.
I totally agree with that. Totally agree.
Yeah. And I think really, if we want to flip the script, like even with Coach Haycock and his defenses, the quarterbacks that we really struggle with is the dual threat guys that can extend plays. When hey, nobody's open, they can go and get a first down or 5, 6, 7 yards and continue to, put pressure on our defense.
We'll move on to running back now. Another position with not necessarily a ton of drama, more just kind of more intrigue than drama as far as starters go. We know that the first two will be Cam Petaway and Aiden Flora. Like that's pretty much where those are going to be the first two. Which one comes out on the field first? I don't know if it matters a ton because they're both going to get plenty of snaps, and both will be featured on special teams. You'd have to assume with Aiden Flora returning the punt against TCU last year and Cam Petaway leading the nation in kick return average last year. They're both big time speed, big time home run threats here. When you're looking as a pro style offense where you can see more A gaps, which we know they will run A gap power. That's Tyler Roll's bit. That's the North Dakota State way, is A gap power in your running game, but obviously they'll move it around here and there. When you see a between the tackles running game, though one that's designed to create wider running lanes, how does a shiftier, more explosive back like Nathan Florida or Cam Petaway, how do they utilize that more differently than like a Carson Hansen would last year, where he's more of a downhill power back? How do you utilize that differently in the running game when you have that type of speed available to you?
A lot of misdirection, pulling guard, even pulling tackle in some points. Just getting the ball out in space. I think the passing game will be good for them, even just flaring them out in situations, getting the ball out in their hands. Zone reads probably going to be big for us this year, getting them outside and putting these guys in space. But I do think the big thing and the big adjustment they'll probably have is running in between the tackles. And you still got to be able to get those tough yards. Sometimes a 3-yard gain is great, and I think just understanding that for the backs, not every play is going to be, a crazy play where you're getting big yards. Sometimes a good play is 3 to 4 yards, and we just got to take that, especially in the type of offense that we're running. Where it's a little, some people would say it's more methodical. Maybe you've got to drive the football down the field. But sometimes those things are going to happen where, hey, we're barely moving off the field, but we're moving the ball up the field. So getting these guys in space is going to be really key. Figuring out what their strengths are, and I'm assuming coaches have some sort of idea by now what these guys like to do, what are they most good at, and figuring it out from there. I think if we can get these guys out in space and put them in positions to make plays, I think they'll flourish.
Yeah, I think the same thing too, like flaring the ball out, extension of the run game on a swing route to a running back. But I think one thing that's going to help them run between the tackles like we want to is the defense having to be honest and respect Rayner's legs for a bootleg, a naked boot, or anything like that. So I think you'll see creases open up on the backside of probably a power or a stretch to the right. You feel me? Mm-hmm. Because they will be accounting for the quarterback running the ball. So I think them planning for that will open it up for our running backs.
And this is a good point here. Impeccable King says John Johnson mentioned he really liked Petaway in a slot role with his hands, and the consensus was to try to have both on the field. I think that's a great point. I think they will absolutely try to do that at some point. Now, the other side of that dual-edged sword is if you're looking at a spot on the team where you would like to have more depth than you do, running back is probably it. Actually, right here, a great question. River Pepper's going to be ready week 1. They say he's going to be ready week 1. If he is, fantastic. That would be a remarkable recovery for him. Because Achilles is essentially a year, which would put him at the beginning of October. If he turns that into 10 months and he's ready to go week 1, I mean, hell yeah. Because I remember if you watch, unfortunately, he only got the one play in college. But if you go back and watch like Rivers high school tape, he's your classic running back that is clearly the best player on the football field and is just dominating by running past people, running through people, running around people, throwing defenders off of him. He has the type of high school tape you want your running back to have, which is very clearly the best, the best player on the field, a dominant high school tape. River Peppers has that. He's a great athlete, can do a lot of different things. What I'm interested in with the dual running back situations, if they do want to take advantage of that here and there, especially with their speed, is get like a split backfield with one on each side of them, run play action with one, and then on the other side have them on a wheel route or something like that, where you can bring something in and hit them on a swing pass to the outside, that kind of thing. Especially if you can get that kind of action and then a receiver blocking that corner on the outside and get them behind a blocker in the open field. With that kind of speed that you have available, Aiden Flora was a 10.6 guy in high school. I think Cam Petaway was right there with him. I think he got clocked like a 4.32 coming out of high school. I mean, you have elite game breaking speed with both of your top two running backs, and getting those two out in space is huge. And I would imagine they'll try to get that, whether it's that kind of action or it's getting them on screens, things like that. Where you can get a tight end or like a Keaton Roscoff H-back type involved there. You have a lot of options there, and both Cam Petaway and Aiden Flora are both plenty good receivers enough to be split out wide if they wanted to do something with that, maybe on some jet action on a jet sweep type of thing. Lots of different options you can do with that caliber of athlete, especially when you got multiple. And then if River Peppers is ready to go, that's huge. You do also have Arnold Barnes back there, the Tulane transfer, 5'10", 220, so a human bowling ball that I would imagine you will see him. I would be blown away if they end up at the 2-yard line. You don't see him at the back of a Maryland I getting ready to plow full speed downhill through the A gap into the end zone. I would be shocked if you don't see that at some point with that kind of size. That's a big boy back there at running back. Especially for a running game like with the A-gap power that likes to just get vertical and run in a straight line.
Straight line.
Yep.
That's what he's built for.
That's exactly that's exactly right. I mean, well, they brought in Saladin Alao, who's 6'2", 225, so a plenty large human being in his own right. But obviously he's hurt for the season, which is why they brought in Arnold Barnes. Yep. Having that pile driver on the goal lines is super valuable, and plus it helps you keep your Aiden Flora and Cam Petaway are definitely smaller, quick backs, wherever that. You'd prefer not to just, not to run into an 8-man box in the goal line if you can. But when you got a guy like Arnold Barnes that can go there and just be the hammer, that's awesome. Do we have a true fullback this year? I don't know that you have an actual fullback on the roster. Maybe Arnold Barnes, you could put him in as a fullback just with how big he is as a running back. But otherwise, you're probably looking more like what the last staff did at the fullback position, which is just a tight end. You take a little bit shorter tight end, like a Keaton Roscoff or like a Derek Schweiger for a while, though that kind of player, or not Derek Schweiger, Steenbuckner, Sam Steenbuckner.
Sam. Yep.
Yeah, Sam Steenbuckner was out there. They've had Dylan Sainer. They've had a million iterations of that player, and so you'll probably have Keaton Roscoff there. The 2027 class, they actually do have a legit fullback in the 2027 class. Like he is classified as a fullback. So congratulations. We got a fullback now, which is, if you're running A-gap power, having a fullback, hell yeah. Plus, especially like the modern fullback is not the like Mike Allstott of the world where that's just getting the ball and they just run straight forward. Modern fullbacks are kind of like tight ends in that, Kyle Juszczyk is the blueprint for fullbacks now versus, Lorenzo Neal or something like that kind of fullback. So tight end position, Steve O'Klotz is another one for sure. The tight end position, there's not a ton to talk about here, only because there's not a ton of depth here. It's Trevor Fortenberry and Keaton Roscoff and a bunch of really, really young guys that, I'm not sure exactly how much they're going to rely on this position this year, just because they're Trevor Fortenberry and Keaton are your only guys come back that have a lot of playing time, and Keaton is never really been asked to do much in the passing game. He's always been that H-back lead blocker type. Trevor came from Arkansas State. Which is notable, obviously. He's coming with his quarterback, so there's obviously some chemistry there as well. Greenlaw is young there. We'll see what he does. Maybe he's your H back, but it's going to be an interesting transition here because we got used to, having, 2, 3 tight ends, 4 at a times on the field where they, they're really doing some wacky stuff with the tight end position. Especially in this power running game. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. Does the lack of serious depth at the tight end position, at least comparatively speaking to what we've seen in previous years, is that a concern to you, or is it like this is a scheme change and we're not as worried about having that kind of depth at tight end at this point in time?
I think it's a little bit of a concern just because of the type of offense we're running. If we're gonna be under center, you're gonna need some tight ends that can be versatile, obviously with blocking, and then being able to be pass catchers out there on the perimeter and stuff like that. And I think just the way college football is now, you need to have depth at every position. I mean, it's a long season. If you get in a position, God forbid, that you get a couple nicked up injuries early on in the season, you're going to have guys ready to go at that position with the offense that we're running. Now, obviously, coaches have to do a good job as well of adjusting. Hey, if our tight ends and we're limited at tight end, probably going to have to go more sets where we're spread out a little bit. So it's about adjustment, but I do think I would say it's not a huge concern right now. Because if you got the guys in and they're healthy, then we're good. But I do think at every position, you can name any position: quarterback, lineman. Well, lineman, we brought in 11 guys, but still, what I'm saying? Just you get nicked up injury. We've seen it before. I mean, corner last year, it was great, and then it wasn't with the injuries just back to back. So you have to be cautious of that, but at the same time, I don't think it's a huge worry right now.
Yeah, I don't think it's a huge worry either. I mean, because if you look at our quarterback, his strength, based off what we've seen, he's better when he's thriving in the spread, based off what we've seen thus far. Yeah. And I mean, as of now, I don't think it's a huge concern, but time will tell.
Well, at Arkansas State, they didn't use the tight end a ton. I mean, partially because they had Corey Rucker out there as an NFL guy, a receiver, but it's something that I think it would be a little bit more of a concern if it was Rocco still back there, since Rocco's used to finding his tight ends on different stuff. And obviously you adjust, and any good quarterback can learn to throw to a receiver instead of a tight end. But, that's kind of it's an interesting thing that even in this system though, Jalen Raynor's used to being able to look where he needs to, and as far as, finding guys out in the slot and things like that too. So, let's move it out to receiver. Marchie, I believe you've been doing some scouting on this group. Obviously, there's a lot of different guys in here. I would imagine we will see a number of guys get snaps, especially early on. Why don't you give us kind of a rundown of this receiver room, how you see it?
Well, obviously a lot of turnover. I think the guy that people are most excited about coming in is obviously Amari Hayes from Tulane. Yeah. Kind of a good slot guy. That he made plays for Tulane last year. He's quick, got good hands. I think he's a guy that we've got to get the ball in his hands early on, and just being able to put him in positions to where he's out in space, throwing them now routes, tunnel screens, quick game stuff, and just getting the ball out of Raynor's hands early on. And getting him the ball. I've liked him. And then really there's just a lot of, not really unknown, but there's just a lot of guys coming in that are fighting for positions. Carter, and then correct me on the last name, Carter Paps.
Carter Pabst, yeah.
Carter Pabst.
Yeah, Washington State transfer. Pabst.
Yeah, he came in Washington State. Not really a lot of film out on him and statistically on him, but another guy that from what I've seen, people are high on and think that he can come in and be productive for us. We got Cody Jackson. The school that he came from is
Tarleton. Yeah, Came from Tarleton, and then
Yeah,
he was
Tarleton State.
Tarleton State.
Yeah.
And previously at Oklahoma before that.
Mm-hmm. And I think a guy, again, to me, what I see from the guys that are coming in, they brought in a lot of guys that, veterans, kind of unknown guys with something to prove, which I think will, light a fire under that group just because there's a lot of unknowns. And one thing that I heard from Coach Rogers at Big 12 Media Days, a lot of people don't know anything about Iowa State for the most part. But the one thing that you can do is you can make yourself be known. And, I think this position in itself is a transgression from that statement that he said. Hey, nobody really knows who's going to be a starter, who can play. But you got to go out there and you got to prove it every single day at practice. And then ultimately when the lights are bright, you got Dom Overby, which I think him having a new coaching staff with a fresh start could be good for him. He's got to do a really good job of. I think we know he's got a good speed for his size. Now he's got to do a good job of being that big target and finishing and being that big receiver and finishing up high. And you're gonna have to make those contested catches. For example, like in the Iowa game last year, early on in the game, if you remember, they threw a fade ball right to him. I believe it was on the first drive or maybe first or second drive of the game. And we just in the end zone and we weren't able to finish the catch. Just different things like that. And those things are going to show up. And again, he's got a fresh new start. And then another guy that probably the second or third guy that really – it's caught my attention, even though he didn't have a lot of production. But the guy that I like is Evan Boyd.
Mm-hmm. Big body.
And, something weird about Iowa State, if you've kind of looked back through the years, and I don't know if it's just a Campbell, Iowa State thing, but all of our receivers that, ended up going on to the NFL or just guys that we remember, they've always had size.
Yeah.
For the most part. You can go back to Allen, Keene. Then you can go with basically.
Well, in 2019, like LaMichael Petway was a big wide receiver. And Xavier Hutchinson was like 6'2". I mean, Hutchinson was not small.
And even
Higgins is big body. Yeah.
Really the only one that was kind of short, the shorter ones that I could just think of. Jalen and then probably Deshaunte. Those are just the ones that come off my head. And there were other good ones. Tariq Milton, Trevor Ryan, things like that. But the ones that really stood out, and I think when we were good, were the bigger body receivers. So I'm really interested to see guys like Dominic Overby and Evan Boyd, who can be that. And I'm assuming other guys that I can't think of right now, but who's going to be that big body receiver that we can throw the ball up to, for Jalen to be comfortable with. So it's really interesting to see by that group is who can be that. But I think early on, obviously, camp, you're still figuring it out. And I even think early on in the year, first couple games, you're going to see a lot of guys coming in and out, substitutions, personnels, things like that. And then figuring out who our guy is and then kind of going from there. I think if you going into I'm not going to say beginning of the season you should know who your guy is, but I'm going to say by the time conference play comes and we're playing against Utah, you should know who your guy is. And we should have some sort of, information, I guess, on who we feel would be the number one guy. Right now, obviously, it looks like it's going to be Amari Hayes, but you never know. Guys step up. And again, this position group to me is the most interesting position group on the offensive side of the ball, with just the turnover on everybody. You pretty much don't bring back. You only bring really back one guy from last year's group, and that's Overby. And he didn't really have, he had time, but, he didn't really have that much playing time as far as once the season got going and stuff like that. So really intrigued on this group. I think there's talent. I think there's size. I think there's guys that, are, maybe undersized as far as height wise, but good route runners, guys with good hands, just from what I was able to kind of find and research on. So I'm very interested to see how they're going to do that. Also with it being a more under center offense, as far as like the personnel groupings, maybe two bigger body receivers at times with the shorter receiver, or if you're going 12 personnel, different things like that, maybe having the receivers that can kind of go together and things like that, as far as fitting the skill set and what the coach is trying to get accomplished on those particular plays. So again, very interested. Obviously, with me being a receiver, I'm always going to be interested and kind of getting intel on what's going on there. But I think, to me, offensively, that's probably the most interesting position group on our offense.
Yep, I totally agree. And one thing I'm trying to figure out is it's going to be tough for Rayner to try to figure out who his security blanket is with that many receivers out there. So, I mean, camp will give him enough time to he'll have it figured out after camp. But I'm actually anxious to see, like, who is, okay, everything that hit the fan, this the guy I'm going to. So I'll be anxious to see that, and we'll see.
And, just a little advice for those receivers, man. I don't know what they've been doing. I'm assuming they've been working hard, obviously, this summer. But, biggest thing is you gotta put in the work. Got to put in the work with Rayner. Got to figure it out as far as, hey, how can I get comfortable? Because I really think if you had to tell me right now, like, he's probably the most comfortable with the tight end because he just came from Arkansas State. But as far as the receiver position, who's going to be the one that Rayner trusts and wants out there, especially when that first game comes around?
A couple interesting, if you're looking at, I mean, to me, like, Omari Hayes is the most obvious slot starter on the team. Evan Boyd feels like an X receiver out there on the outside. That maybe that's your security blanket. That's your guy that you go to on 3rd and 5. You get him a zig route or something like that. Just get him to the outside and let him use his big body to block off the defender. Essentially, functionally is just kind of a fast tight end. Really, you like that there. I tell you what, though. A guy to keep an eye on here. We'll see what he does. See if he shows up at all. But they pulled in a walk-on off of the track team this offseason, Brandon Gallner. 6'5", 200 pounds. He was a high jumper at Iowa State. Played football in high school. He's 6'5" and has a 39-inch vertical. And that kind of size and speed and that kind of athleticism, when you're looking for a big body receiver, keep an eye on Brandon Gallner. So I don't know for sure what his role looks like since he's just coming in kind of in his last year of school, just trying, just going for football this time. But they worked him out once and gave him a scholarship. So clearly there's something there.
Something. Sure.
And you can find high school tape of him, even at 6'5", like, you can watch him, like, after the catch, he's as you'd expect from a track athlete, a high jumper, he's got really, really good footwork. Good balance, does a nice job staying on his feet, does a nice job after the catch. And I want to touch on that with the receivers specifically before we move on to the offensive line here, because you will see throughout this entire team, both offense and defense, the main theme of everybody, this entire roster build was very clearly speed. Cam Petaway. They kept Aiden Flora. They kept River Peppers. Cody Jackson can fly. Omari Hayes can fly. They just brought a 6'5" track kid. They've got speed everywhere on this offense, and we're going to get to it, but they have speed all over the place on defense too. Which is a lot different than how we saw Campbell's teams approach roster building, where, like you said, it was size, it was physicality and stuff. And this, I would imagine this team will still be plenty physical. But but then on the defense, you saw linebackers playing 240, 235, 240, 250. I mean, what'd you play at, Jordan? 240?
240.
Yeah. I mean, that's a bigger linebacker, which,
Bigger.
you know, if you were going to go into a 4.25, you'd slim down to 225, 230, 230 at the most, 225, 220.
Literally.
You know, and you're going to see that on both sides of the ball, that you're going to see more team speed from Iowa State than you've seen in a very, very long time. Now, we'll see how that meshes with what they want to do with the physicality portion of this. We got to see how it meshes. But, you know, speed is speed. You know, there's you know, the old adage, speed kills. And when they talk about, why the SEC is so much better than the other conferences, or why the perception is that it's better than other conferences, is because the SEC, it's SEC speed. That's what they talk about, is they have different levels of speed than everybody else. Well, Iowa State is doing their damnedest to play the speed game, and we'll see how it works out. But it's a totally different, mindset roster building wise than what we saw with Campbell, where, they had individual players that obviously, Kennedy Wangu, Jalen Knoll, like legit burners at some positions, but it wasn't necessarily always the theme of the roster build. You can look at this and be like, okay, what was their philosophy for building this roster on both sides of the ball? It's one, we're going to have multi-year guys. We're not just going to have rental seniors, which that's what Jalen Raynor was. Turns out not a rental anymore. He can stay for next year. And speed. Young guys, speed. And we can teach them to do the other stuff, but we can't teach them how to run really, really damn fast. And they've got a lot of guys that can fly. Did you guys get a chance to watch Cam Petaway at all? Have you seen any of his tape at all? Especially on like kick returns.
I saw a little bit.
Watch especially his bowling green highlights on kick returns. Watch him when he can open it up in the open field. There is nobody catching. Nobody's touching him. Like my guess is that Cam Petaway, if you put him just on a 100-meter dash, would be on par with Kennedy Wangu. Like, just as far as just raw speed goes, it's incredible to watch when he can get it in the open field and open it up. It's a high-end speed. All right.
The last thing I'll say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Last thing I want to say about the speed, too, just another aspect. With a quarterback that's a dual threat,
yes, and
you're under center, guess what's going to be happening a lot? Play action, sinking guys up after constant run, boom, and then now you're getting your speed one-on-one with the DB and him running full speed. So that's something to look out for too.
Worth noting here with track hitter Overby, one funny enough, both 6'4", 6'5", high. Overby was they were both track stars. Overby was the Utah State the Utah State record holder, I believe, for the high jump. Both elite athletes. I don't know which one's faster. Both of them can run pretty well. They wouldn't. I don't think they would have just picked up this random track athlete in his senior year for 1 year if they didn't think like this kid can help us and has that elite speed and size combo that we're looking for. So that's why I just, like I said, I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what he looks like. He hasn't played football for the last 4 years. They gave him a scholarship after one workout. That's worth noting. It's just something worth noting. All right, let's move on to the offensive line. And obviously, none of us, obviously we're not necessarily offensive line guys. We can, I've noticed that more than almost any other position on the field. You have there's offensive line guys, and then there's everybody else. Like, it's just guys that know offensive line. And, I'm certainly not going to claim to be an expert on all the little ins and outs of every single of offensive line as far as footwork and all that good stuff. But they did bring in a lot of guys here in the offensive line as far as roster-wise go, personnel-wise, that I think are really, really interesting. There's a few guys that we can look at here. I think as these guys are definitely, if not going to be starters, they are going to be involved in that rotation early on. I think when you're, Austin Barrett returns from the Campbell staff, I think he's probably in the rotation there. Dontrell Holt's in the same boat. If you go, they look like Colin Amick coming over from Michigan State, which is funny. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of him, but he wears the old middle half bar or whatever. Yeah. Goes pretty hard on a 6'2" center that's built like a brick shit house. Yeah. And then you've got DeAndre Carter coming over. He's a guard, came over from Auburn last year, redshirted last year, or played some special teams for Auburn last year, coming over with Jake Thornton, the offensive line coach. Braden Smith, he's coming over. Gavin Brocious is coming, or sorry, Colin Amick. Gavin Brocious coming over from Michigan State. Colin Amick is coming from Washington State. That's my mistake. Not Washington State. He's a Montana transfer. So it's hard to keep these in track. But if you're coming from an FC right now, if you're coming from an FCS program, Montana is about the gold standard right now. Used to be like North Dakota State, South Dakota State. Obviously, South Dakota State is still a very good program. North Dakota State still a very good program. They're in the FBS now. But Montana State have been kind of the gold standard for FCS the last few years. That's a good program to pull from, and we've got a safety from there as well that we'll talk about later, and a corner. You've got Gavin Brocious coming over from Michigan State. He's the one with the half bar. Masai King come as a tackle coming over from Akron. If you go look at it like his PFF grades last year, grades out very, very well. I know he's very highly thought of. Then you've got Gavin Proudfoot, a tackle coming in from UNI, noted program that produces good offensive linemen.
True.
Jake Taylor coming over from Oklahoma. They've just got tons of names here that I think are really interesting. The question is going to be, how do you take that 10 or 11 name mix and boil it down to, you're going to have 5, but then really you're going to have probably like 8.
Yeah, 8.
Probably 8. It's tricky. Like it's a tricky situation because you have some guys like a Masai King who's coming in as a redshirt senior. He's been doing this forever. Jake Taylor he was at Oklahoma forever. You'd think those guys would have a leg up, something like this, just from an experience standpoint. But how do you go about breaking this thing down? Because offensive line is a whole different thing. I mean, it's not just, we saw it at times. The last staff took the approach of, we're just going to have the 5 best players on the field and we're just going to figure it out. And sometimes it worked, and there's plenty of times it didn't work out. Yeah. You have a lot of positional flexibility in this group. If you guys were figuring out how to boil this group down a little bit, where are you looking first? Are you looking at experience? Are you looking at athleticism? How are you boiling this thing down?
Me personally, I think I'm looking at experience to start off.
Sure.
But probably every 2 or 3 days in training camp, it'll be a different combination of them. Like we have these 5 running with the 1s, these 5 running with the 2s, and that combination will just be all through camp. And by the time camp ends, of course, we'll know. But we're going to sound like a little broken record, because what's going to make their job so much easier is their quarterback.
Mobile
the
quarterback.
ability to run the ball. It's going to make their job that much easier. So that's what I
think. Yeah, I think it's experience. And then obviously you're going to find the best 5. I don't know. I've been back and forth. I don't know if you find the best 5 and then figure out how you do it from there, or you figure out, all right, who's our core guys at these pieces, and then kind of work from there. That's kind of a coach's decision. But what I will say is you definitely want experience. One, you want smart guys at the O-line that can pick up on things, blitz pick up certain things, obviously with film study, different things like that. And then who. But the one thing that Coach Rogers mentioned, though, as far as how he wants to be the line of scrimmage, is tough. Who's going to be those guys that are tough? And, not just when everything's going great, but when things aren't going well, who are going to be those guys that can be tough, smart, dependable. And I think one of the big things as far as guys probably getting playing time is being versatile, not just being able to play tackle, but being able to also play guard or help out at center. Just having another spot that you're comfortable with, that will help you get on the field more. So I would probably go with the experience, tough, dependable, those things. But it's going to be very interesting to see, obviously, with bringing in 11 guys.
It is.
I think especially at the guard spot, with just looking through some tape as far as kind of like how the Lions do this, how North Dakota State likes to run the ball, or did like to run the ball especially when Tyler Roller was there. They pull guards all the time, left and right. They'll pull a guard and a tackle off of one side. They'll do all sorts of crazy shit. I think when you're looking at this group too, one thing you can see clearly when you look at tape from like Masai King, you look at it from DeAndre Carter, you look at it, especially and Colin Amick as well. You can see very clear mobility there, good lateral mobility on these guys as far as being able to be that pulling, be a pulling guard or even be a pulling tackle. The athleticism component there is going to be huge. So it would not shock me if the guys you see float to the top early are your best lead blockers or your best run blockers early on, and then kind of then you focus on getting the run blocking taken care of, your downhill running, get your pullers taken care of, and then shore up your pass blocking from there, especially if you can use your mobile quarterback, get him outside the pocket on your sprints and your rollouts and things like that. That's probably how I would approach it, I think. But Jake Thornton certainly has an interesting task in front of him, piecing together basically an entirely new group of guys. Not only did he not coach them last year, except for with the exception of DeAndre Carter, but these guys are also all new to each other. They're all new to the school. They're all new to the system, to the coaching staff, and everything. It's an interesting position to be in at least now, well, maybe now it's more common with the transfer portal and guy, when a coach leaves, you have to overhaul the whole roster now. But this is a new thing that, these guys that have been position coaches for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, this is, they're not used to getting 15 guys that have never met each other before to gel. They're used to bringing in 5 or 6 and then just getting them to gel with the guys you already got there.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting
kind of
situation.
I'm assuming including the freshmen that are enrolling in too.
Plus the true freshmen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And which at this point, as far as just like with being familiar with the system and all that, the true freshmen are, not that far off from the experienced guys. Now, the experienced guys should be able to pick up the nomenclature and all that. They should be able to pick that up a little bit faster. But, everybody's new.
Man.
And at this point, I would hope you would have the thing is like there is nobody's penciled in as a starter or anything like that. It's just this is open competition, and I'd be curious to like talk to Jake Thornton too. Like, is his approach the 5 best, or do you find these are your tackles, these are your interior guys, these are your guards, these are your centers type of thing? Because even guard and center is a different skill set. Do you find those positions and then just find the best 2 or the top 2 or 1 or 2 from each of those and go with that? I'd be curious I'd be interested in what his roster building philosophy there is and what his depth chart philosophy is there. Because there's multiple ways to skin that cat for sure.
It is.
So, alrighty. We're going to move over to the defensive side of the football. And I know Jordan's over there itching to get to it.
Yeah, you know it.
But fortunately, we're not going to get to linebackers just yet because we're going to start on the defensive line. Very fun group. There are lots of fun names involved here. And one thing that's noticed, the biggest change, obviously, from last season to this season is going from a 3-down front to a 4-down front. Total scheme shift defensively, and obviously we're going to talk to that. And we'll before the season starts, maybe Jordan get involved here too. As far as we're going to do we're going to put together a pre-produced video. We're going to put together a good video going through the X's and O's of how a 4-2-5 works. Because this is a defense that, to my knowledge, Iowa State has never run as a primary defense. We ran 3-3-5 under Campbell. Rhodes was a 4-3 guy, and sometimes a 3-4, sometimes a 4-3. They bounced around a little bit, which is sometimes not the best way to put a defense together, but they always had good defensive units, so they figured it out. But mostly a 4-3 guy. Then you obviously had the 3-3-5 under John Haycock with Matt Campbell. You're at a 4-2-5 now, which Gary Patterson at TCU kind of was the main kind of forerunner of this scheme. Or was really the one that really popularized it because his TCU teams were always really good defensively, and they always had lots of team speed. And that 4-2-5 was the base defense for his Horned Frog teams for a long, long time. Even if not, it's more popular now because Gary Patterson started using that at TCU with the program that he built up to be obviously what TCU was for a long time and still is. So looking on the defensive line here. do have a couple returners on the interior, especially you've got Zamir Hawk, who I imagine will be, you could probably pencil him in as he's going to be a day one starter. He was basically a starter last season, and eventually, he's coming back. When you're looking at this, at a 4 down front, how does that benefit a guy like Zamir Hawk? Because obviously he's playing in a 3-3-5. He's playing that nose tackle spot right up on the center most of the time. How does this free him up to do other things? What does his job look like now as a defensive tackle on over a guard versus being a nose tackle over a center in the 3-3-5?
Well, I think personally, I mean, it's simple. It makes it more gap sound. Like instead of being a nose guard, having to bull rush the center and work 2 gaps, it's simple now. If you're on the guard, you got to control that B gap. If you're a shade, you got to control that A gap, the outside shoulder of the center. So I think it's literally that simple. It's that simple, just more gap control now. You don't have to worry about 2 gaps. Get in this gap. If you got a double team, the backers we got, they'll get downhill fast. That double team will come off you. So it's literally just that simple.
And I imagine for him, especially for just defensive tackles in this system in general, which is why you saw like Kamari Moore also came back from the last staff. He redshirted last year. Is that when you're playing as a tackle over top of a guard in a 4-3 or in a 4 down front, anyways, you do have some more opportunities to actually rush the passer versus just basically being kind of just a gap eater in the middle of that. Because that's what, like, if you go back to like Ray Lima, what he was really good at in that center of that defense was just being a gap eater, where he could basically by himself eat up both the A gap on either side of the center, and then you work from there and let Jaquan and Will McDonald and whoever else do their thing. Versus this one, you're not always in charge of 2 gaps on either side of a center, where you're managing not just the guy in front of you, you're managing anybody coming through on either side of you. So it lessens not necessarily, I wouldn't say lessens necessarily, but it changes the individual responsibility for the defensive tackle so that they can be more aggressive. You still be gap sound, obviously, but you can be more aggressive when you're defending the run game as far as trying to push through to a gap and close something off versus just monitoring one or the other and trying not to over pursue one side.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Which is why I'd imagine Zamir Hawk was excited to come back, because this is just it is a more friendly system for a defensive tackle, especially one that wants to do more things that end up on a stat sheet.
Yeah, I was just about to get the tackles for loss. That can get you more TFLs, more sack. That can get you there.
Yeah, it's instead of having a nose tackle that averages 9 tackles a season, like now they can be in there and be in the backfield a lot more often. And obviously, I would say it had individual guys. Dominique Orange obviously was a monster. Through that, shooting gaps and all sorts of stuff like that. But he's kind of a little bit of an aberration in that defense with how productive he was as a pass rusher from the interior of that 3 down front. Whereas, Zamir Hawk now has more freedom to rush the passer, and he has less on his shoulders in terms of the run game instead of trying to run the entire run defense from his spot in front of the center. Moore returns. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in my opinion, it allows them to be able to play faster and be more aggressive.
Absolutely.
Get into the football.
Yeah. Absolutely. Couple guys down here as well. Max Balloon comes over. He's from Washington State as well as a holdover. I think he was hurt a little bit last year. I would expect him to be in the rotation. Bryson Lamb is another guy coming over from Washington State that he's going to be in the starting rotation, I would imagine. My guess is that your starting defensive tackles will be Bryson Lamb and Zamir Hawk, if I was guessing. Yeah. But they've got some good depth here, and especially some good young depth as well, where I think you can. Yeah, and Balloon followed them from South Dakota State to Washington State and now to Iowa State. If you're looking at go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just have a question. I'll wait until after you get done about the D line.
Okay, yeah. Those, I think you're looking at Bryson Lamb and Zamir Hawk as your starters. I think you'll absolutely see Max Balloon rotate in there. it would not shock me. Well, you'll see Kamari Moore involved in there as well. He's, highly touted freshman coming out of there. He's 6'1", 304. He's got all the size there. One interesting name to keep an eye on here is Ajibula Afuye. He's a true freshman from Minnesota. He's on the smaller side now, so you might play him more outside early on if you're going to play him early. 6'5", 250 on the roster as of right now. So, undersized, not big enough for a defensive tackle right now.
Yeah.
But that is good size. That's a good size for him to be on the edge there, or if they're going to put in an extra of just a fifth pass rusher there in the middle to just do some stuff. We'll see where he figures in there. I think eventually it wouldn't shock me if he puts on a little bit and gets up to that 275 and acts as kind of a hybrid, can kind of bounce back and forth a little bit between the two. Especially because, in this system, you don't need to have a guy there that's 6'2", 330 like Dominique Orange was. Nah. You don't need that kind of there because you'd rather have, like as Marchie said, you'd rather them be able to play a little bit faster, and take advantage of that. Take advantage of that extra speed you've got available to you. On the outside, I would say it's got some very interesting names here. I think number one, you could argue maybe the best transfer they got in the entire portal, which was Isaac Terrell. Bobby Terrell, as he goes by Bobby. He is an NFL guy. It's kind of awesome that they got him to stick around. He had an opportunity to go to the Big Ten, go to the SEC. He could have gone to some pretty big schools. Chose to follow this staff to Washington State. I would imagine if you're looking at a guy that who might lead this team in sacks, I would take a very hard look at Bobby Terrell. He, Jimmy Rogers talked about him. He went to media days. Jimmy Rogers talked about him as well at media days, and a lot is he plays harder than anybody in college football. Basically, is what he said. Love my defensive ends to be the guys who just bust their ass every play. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm looking at in my defensive end.
One thing that I'm going to be very excited to see is not have the quarterback get to sit and just sit. Yeah. And just sit. And, having great coverage on the back end. But at the same time, let's put some pressure on this quarterback and just not let him just sit here and just, dissect us, and so it'll definitely be interesting with that.
I think Cyclone fans are ready to see some sacks again. Haven't really seen a lot of them since Will McDonald left. I think we're ready to see the quarterback on his butt a few more times.
Yeah, we'll see that with a 4th down for sure.
I think we will too. And this scheme too, especially with the speed they've got available and the man coverage abilities they've got available on this. My guess is you'll see some more, not just the 4 down front, but you'll see some more pressure look. I would imagine trying to get teams uncomfortable, and this defensive scheme in general is going to be a lot more aggressive than the 3-3-5, which I guess this is an okay transition spot here as well, since we'll be getting ready to move to linebackers. In my mind, I really like the idea of moving to a more aggressive system. Obviously, it's pretty hard to criticize the 3-3-5 under John Haycock. It was wildly successful. Won, I would say, a ton of football games. There's a reason it is now a commonly run system across college football now. And John Haycock is responsible for that. It even shows up in the NFL now too, to stop air raid schemes and stuff like that. There's a reason it is that, and that's because it was very good for a long time. But the main complaints about that is it was not very good at getting pressure on the quarterback. It was not great at dealing with mobile quarterbacks. And it also did not generate a ton of turnovers. There was some seasons they did fairly well turnover wise because of individual efforts, like a TJ Tampa or something like that, just like true ball hawks back there. But or Anthony Johnson kind of became a little bit of a ball hawk towards the end of his career. It was not a defense that generated a ton of negative plays, and it didn't generate a ton of turnovers. It was just rock solid all the time. And there's something to be said for that. But now you have an offense a defense that's they're going to gamble a little bit more, but you can generate more negative plays. You can generate more turnovers. And for a team that's, going to be, the defense is going to be ahead of the offense, in my opinion. I would expect the defense to be in pretty good shape to start the season, whereas the offense will be kind of figuring things out a little bit. The more long change you can put teams in, and the more times you can just give the ball to the offense and let them do their thing, I think that benefits a team like this greatly. I love this idea, this scheme for this team in this situation.
Yeah, I do too. Jordan, I had a question for you, D-line, before we transition. Sorry, Levi.
No,
right.
you're
All right, you good?
With the with our D-line, with us being in 3-3-5, usually the guys in the middle haven't really been like the biggest as far as size, maybe besides like Dom Orange.
Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be a big transition as far as the size and what they're looking for with us now having 4 down linemen? For example, are we going to see more guys that are like, 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", and 300 plus pounds trying to fill in those gaps? Or do you think they're going to try and have more guys that maybe are on the lighter end? They're still heavy, but on the lighter end to make more of those plays to get in the backfield.
Yeah, but I think with this staff, and I could be wrong, but just based off reading up on them, I think they're gonna go with the quick guy that can get off blocks and get back there and make a play. So I think that'll be the probably 6'2", 280. I think a 6'2", 280 guy can play a 3 technique, or a 290 can play a 3 technique in their system, because that's basically what they're looking for. They're looking for a guy that can control a gap and not a big guy that can take up 2 gaps. So yeah, I think we'll look for more slimmer and faster guys. Honestly, That's what I think. What you think, Levi?
I mean, I would agree with you there, and I think that reflects in how they built this roster too. Because if you look at the defensive end spot here too, you do have a couple bigger, like Jace Gilbert's 6'5", 270, he's a little bit bigger guy. But you see speed here. I mean, you see 235, 240, 250 in there, guys that can get around. Notably, the greatest pass rusher in school history, lighter weight, faster guy. It's a damn shame that Will McDonald couldn't play in this system, because the guy would average 25 sacks a year and it'd be fucking insane.
That wouldn't be fair in that system.
I mean, it'd be cheating. It'd be straight up cheating. He was already a first round pick, and he would have gone top 5 if he got to play in this 4-down system. But Bobby Terrell, I think, is an easy, definitely day one starter. He's gonna be there. Few other guys I think will figure in the rotation. Malachi Tease from Washington State came over, interesting guy. Caden Crawford is in there as well. Trevor Don, Malik's little brother, stayed around from the last staff. Yep. He's 6'1", 245, so a little bit shorter, but he's got a little bit stockier guy. Hopefully he can get around that. Being a little bit shorter in defensive end allows you to get a little bit better leverage and get up underneath a little bit if he's got the speed for it. Jace Gilbert, obviously I mentioned, 6'5", 270, big boy. I mean, that's your classic prototype edge rusher back then, that size. Jack Limbaugh is a redshirt freshman. He stayed over from the last staff, and I know like he was a highly touted recruit coming in. The last staff really liked him. He stuck around. I don't blame a lot of these defensive line guys, sticking around, because the 4-3, a 4 down front is just going to be friendlier to defensive linemen across the board. Just in general, if you want to do more stuff, the 4 down front's going to help you a lot more than that 3 down front. So it does not shock me that of the position groups on the field, or of the position groups on the roster right now, that as far as who stayed from the last staff versus who left, it does not shock me that the defensive line has by far the most guys that stuck around, because this scheme is just better to play in for them for the most part.
They probably.
Carter was wondering about height and body weight, Bobby's height and weight. Bobby is listed 6'2", 255, which I think is right in that wheelhouse about where you're going to see a lot of the defensive ends in this system. There's some interesting guys there. I mean, the nice thing is you have one like just alpha dog pass rusher there with Bobby Terrell. They'll have to find another guy there to pair him up with on the other side of that. But I think you've got a nice foundation here with that defensive line that you can build around with the rest of that defense.
Yeah, and I think the Bobby kid is a kid that can force double teams, which will leave everybody in one-on-ones. So when you're one-on-one. Yeah, we can do that. We can do that in the 3 down, because we can have 2 double teams going on.
2 double teams, yeah.
So yeah.
Yep, absolutely. All right, now we're gonna move backwards just a little bit to Jordan's bread and butter there with the linebackers. Why don't you give us a rundown of linebackers here? A position group I am very high on.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the linebackers for sure. I think we got two guys that can potentially be all Big 12 players. We got Montrez Smith transferred in from Austin P. Young guy. He got to get his feet wet, but I think he's going to be okay after watching a little high school film on him. We got Sullivan, which is he can be an Iowa State great based off watching him, man. He's
a young kid too. True sophomore. Yep.
Watching him last year against Ole Miss.
Sophomore. Yeah.
Yep, true sophomore. Watching him last year against Ole Miss and just looking at the kind of year he had as a true freshman playing Power 4 football that fast, he's going to be really good. I'm high on him. I think he can be a guy that can be he can be great. Trust me, he can be great.
He can be your next Mike Rose, that kind of guy. Like next,
AJ, like he got that potential.
Jake and AJ, Jeremiah Smith. Yeah, like
I was about to say that. I paused to say it, but then you're right, Levi. You were totally correct. Then we got Carson Willich. Hopefully we can get him healthy all year. And that guy, one of my favorites is Willie Breland, Mississippi kid. We're trying to see. He's like a hybrid. He was at junior college at Gulf Coast. He played a little safety, and now in this system, they got him actually playing backer, which is great to me because I think this kid has the ability, Marchie, to go out there. He can potentially cover a number 2 receiver, depending on what we're in, and we won't have to change personnel. So overall, I'm real excited about this group, and I'm ready to watch them. But I think we can have 2 studs in this group for sure.
And I tell you what, Carter's right on it because he knows what the name that you didn't mention that I'm waiting on was Tristan Exline.
Oh.
Now Tristan Exline was a guy that when I saw him come in, I got a chance to watch his tape because he's coming straight from D2. Did not even FCS, straight from D2, but he had other Power 4 offers, like from Oklahoma State and a few others coming out of straight out of D2. 6'1", 220, flies around the ball. He played at a 4.2 in a 4.25 at his D2 school, which is obvious, like an obvious reason you go after him. He's athletic. He's really smart. He's played forever, and he's played forever in this system. So he knows where he's at, where he's got to be. That kid, I tell you what, man. If you watched like a lot of the great cyclone linebackers that were just everywhere all the time, like I said, Jeremiah Smith, AJ Klein, Jake Knott, the guys that were just everywhere, Jordan, that were just all over the place all the time. Tristan's right there. Tristan's right there.
I got to check them out, and they gonna make it hard on the coaches. Because it's a lot of talent. It's a talented room. Yeah. So
well, and the great part here too is you have a lot of good coverage skills in this room. Especially I do want to talk a little bit about Willie Breland here because you and I both are big fans of Willie Breland.
Yep.
We did see him in the spring game run with the starters pretty much the entire spring practice.
Yep. We did.
And what I really like here is that he played safety. He's got the coverage skills as a safety there, but they got him playing at linebacker like 215, 220, something like that, which you're going to notice a lot of Iowa State's linebackers are in that 220, 230 range. Freshmen will come in maybe at 210, 215. They'll get them up into 225, but then they'll just hang out there. You won't see a situation like an Orion Vance where he's playing middle linebacker as a senior at 255, 260, which is way too heavy for what that linebacker does not work in this system. Yeah. The positional flexibility, especially with Willie Breland here, gives you what I like about this is that in a 4-2-5 versus a 4-3-3, obviously 4-2-5 has 5 defensive backs and 2 linebackers. 4-3-3 has 3 linebackers, 4 defensive backs. When you have a guy like Willie Breland that can be a safety, he can be a linebacker. Your personnel flexibility there is awesome because now the difference between a 4-2-5 and a 4-3-3 based on your personnel in the field is trivial. It doesn't matter. There is no difference.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And which makes it easier on the DC because he ain't got to change personnel if you want to go man coverage.
Exactly right. You can keep him in man.
Guys out there from man and zone.
Absolutely. You can play him in a heavy box. You could bring him up in a heavier box at a 7-man box. You can sit out there and play your nickel package and he can be your nickel. Yep. He's got that kind of versatility there, which is why, I'm in love with this linebacker group. I think there are so many names in this room that I was like, this guy can do something. This guy can do something. This guy can do something. And, it's such a good problem to have, but yeah, you got to find snaps for as many of these guys as you can.
You got to.
Yeah.
You got to.
It's kind of amazing. You lose a linebacker on the field and somehow the room is deeper than it was before. But they've got speed. Again, like I said, the theme of this is speed. Carson Willich was playing at 230, 235 last year. He's down to 220. And I'm sure for Carson, that feels great to run around at 220 instead of 235.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
And another guy we didn't mention here, Bo Goodwin. Last year he played a bunch through his first two years. Took some lumps early on because he was kind of functionally playing out of position. But he's another guy at 6'3", 221, where he's played as an edge rusher for the pass defense. But he's got the size, he's got the coverage ability. Actually, he could drop back into that Willie Breland type role if you wanted him to. You've got a lot of versatility there, and specifically, you can play with speed. Rylan Barnes stuck around. He's playing at 230 now instead of like 245 like he was. That's positional flexibility. That's speed.
And they're showing you with the weight drops. Yeah, we trying to play fast physical defense.
Mm-hmm. I remember seeing Coach Rogers talk about his philosophy at media day, where he was talking about, especially defensively, they're more focused on having speed and having guys being able to run, get to the football as fast as they can, make plays, different things like that. So definitely a big difference from what we've been used to.
Absolutely. And like I said, when we go to do this, do the defensive scheme kind of explainer video, where we can really dive into the X's and O's and figure out like kind of how gap assignments work and how coverage assignments work and how you're passing guys off and stuff. And sometimes not passing them off, because we're playing a lot more man coverage in this one, which means that linebackers absolutely will be asked to guard some receivers man to man. When you look at, like I would say last year, they under John Haycock, they were in man-to-man coverage less than 10% of the time. Usually about 5 or 6% is all they were playing man coverage. You can expect at least 50% man coverage in this defense. At least 50%. I mean, if you go back and watch the Ole Miss tape, they are playing man every damn play, which frankly is kind of cocky for Washington State to show up down in Oxford and just play Ole Miss say man-to-man and just say, beat us, and they in Washington State almost beat them with that defense. And like so that game absolutely we will look at, because especially the first half of that game is a defensive masterclass by Washington State.
And I'm really interested to see, obviously not looking ahead, but a contrast, or I don't even know, I'm blanking out on the word I'm supposed to be using, but with Iowa being more of a physical, big size team compared to our team, and now where we're trying to have a lot more speed. It'll be an interesting compare and contrast. But I think with Iowa and how they play, a lot of times we want to load the box, and I think leave our guys out wide because I don't know what they have, but they haven't really had the receivers that could just separate.
They still don't. I can tell you right now, they don't.
I mean? So I think that actually benefits us in that game. If we're able to load the box, we're able to control the line of scrimmage, and then allow your athletes to kind of just play those guys man to man. And again, from the outside looking in, you kind of like that matchup secondary wise versus, and obviously linebacker too, with some of our linebackers being able to cover wide receiver too. So that's just something, even when Coach Rogers was talking about it at media day, as far as the speed, it's going to be some good early tests to test not only our speed, because obviously teams are going to run what they run, but definitely testing our middle of the defense and our linebackers as far as their size as well.
Yeah. And I think for us having that size and wanting to be fast and physical, we can try to force the issue a little bit more than we have in the past. So if we want to bring up 6-man pressure and play cover 0 behind it or cover 1 behind it, we can. So I think our blitz percentages will be up this year for sure too.
And for better or worse, they started to figure it out obviously towards the end. But for a long time, Matt Campbell always matched up with Iowa, basically just try to match them up size for size, essentially. Now with a different scheme, but if they're going to put a bunch of 320-pound linemen in our face, we're going to put a 330-pound defensive tackle in their face, kind of thing. And you just always attacked Iowa by just kind of waiting them out and waiting for them to just kind of fall apart on their own. But as Marchie said, I do like the idea here that you can attack them a lot more often, because Iowa has Reese Vanderzee, I guess, is their best receiver. Okay.
I would hope that he's not the best receiver.
You
I would think that that's not going to be the best receiver we see all year.
you would think probably not. And especially if you can get Iowa in this, where they don't have on the roster right now. They probably don't have they don't have probably an NFL tight end on the roster right now. Receivers aren't really there. They've got a stable of running backs. But you've got more linebacker speed now to keep up with them a little bit better and to attack and to shoot gaps a little bit and to attack them a little bit more and try to generate more negative plays. And I tell you what, if you put Iowa behind the sticks, they're in trouble. They're in trouble quickly. They have a quarterback they don't believe in. They have one receiver they kind of believe in and nobody else. And their offensive line is good, not great, not up to Iowa standards usually. They don't really have an NFL tight end right now. To me, matching up this more aggressive offense with an Iowa defense or an Iowa offense that is kind of in a weird transition period between like the old, downhill Kirk Ferentz old school offense versus like what Tim Lester is trying to do with. He's trying to modernize them and just drag them kicking and screaming into the 21st century. They're in a weird transition year with that right now. And I think attacking them and getting in their face and causing some havoc, getting them on their butt, turning them over, I think that is a recipe for trouble for Iowa. Yeah. I absolutely think it is. Let's move to the secondary. Now, as we mentioned, Willie Breland did play safety last year at Gulf Coast, so we imagine he'll be involved in the secondary a little bit as kind of that nickel guy. The last staff called it a star, whatever you want to call it. Just kind of the floater fifth guy there, basically. But they've got some really interesting names here. We'll start at corner. David Coffey returns. I would guess you're probably going to look at him as a day one starter coming back from the Campbell staff. He had a chance to talk at media days. Super impressive kid. We've heard coming out of just in general, he's a really good clubhouse guy, really good locker room guy. Another guy on this one, along with Benny Nagoye coming back. The obvious appeal from playing zone all the time to playing, face up man-to-man coverage all the time. To me, if you're a corner that wants to play, that chooses to play heavy man coverage over heavy zone coverage all the time, that tells me there's a mentality involved in there. Marchie, you coach a little bit of corners in high school too. There's a different mentality to being a man-to-man corner. To be in a bump and run corner than to be in a zone corner. Yeah. Totally different mentality.
Yes. Number one, going into the game, it's just a difference. If I don't cover this guy, I could get exposed. It's just that confidence, that swagger, that I think a lot of corners, they want to play man to man. They want to go out there and make plays and have teams test them and throw the ball at them and things like that. I'm happy that they're doing a lot more of this. Zone defense is good. Obviously, we're gonna mix our looks up. I don't expect this to just be man the whole game like some teams, but at the same time, now that we're getting them, hey, it's third down. Hey, this is the money down. As I tell my corners, third down, third and long. Oh man, you should be seeking and knowing that, hey, it's on me to get us off the field right now. And I think with our group, I'm assuming our corners, and I didn't even do a huge deep dive, but I do think they prefer the secondary with a little bit of size.
Absolutely.
And so, if you got speed, number one, that's going to help your confidence as well as anything, as far as including your technique. So, those DBs, I think they're really, really excited just from what I saw at media day and just kind of how the intel that I'm getting, that they're really excited about being able to kind of be more involved in the game. Not necessarily saying that they weren't before, but you're able to play man to man and know that, hey, I got to cover this guy. I gotta make sure that he's not involved in the game and stuff like that. That brings out a different confidence, different swagger. And, to know that, hey, it's on me. I got to get us off the field right now on this third down and long, or when the quarterback tests you, I have to go over here and make a play mano-a-mano.
Absolutely. And in the size you brought up is absolutely true. I mean, if you just go down the roster, you've got 6'1", 6'1", 6'4", 6'1", 5'10", 6'2", 6'1", 6'1", 6'2", 5'11". And so, I mean, like, you've got most of that room, most of the secondary is over 6 foot. And then obviously you got Ben Ngoye sitting there at 6'4".
You can even look at it in recruiting too.
Yeah,
they recruited a couple guys from actually the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We actually, Levi, I play in Iowa State commit too this year.
Oh yeah.
Arlington Lamar, I think they have a corner that we just got a commit from. Lamar.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
We played them this year, our third game of the year, so that'll be fun.
Third game. Yeah. Let us know how he is.
Oh yeah.
Let us know.
After the game, be dapping them up. Like, hey man, I need you to make some plays. I can talk about it.
Like, listen, if one guy's got
not tonight.
Make
some plays.
Rooting for you literally every other night, but tonight, Shahariam Thurston is the corner from Arlington Lamar. But
you can tell in recruiting the big things that you talked about. They like tall, lean defensive ends, and what I'm seeing is in the secondary, they want tall or taller guys with a little bit of size as far as height, but they want that speed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can talk about the recruiting, but like the 2027 class is littered with speed. It is a fast class, very fast class. And there's especially like the receivers they got are. I'm super excited about the receiver. That's another show though, because I'm ready to gush about the receivers in the 2027 class. But so looking at corner, I think David Coffey is an easy day one starter. Benny Ngoye, where he's at in the rotation, will entirely depend on how quickly he's adapted to the new scheme. How he's still in that transition period from receiver to corner, which Darren Porter took a couple years for him to really get comfortable with it. And obviously now Benny Ngoye is not just transitioning positions; now he's changing defenses. And maybe man-to-man principles are a little bit easier for the transition, maybe. But if he played, especially if like in high school when he played corner, if he was playing man in high school at corner, he's a little bit more familiar with that kind of thing. Seth Johnson coming over from Montana State, I would expect him to be involved here as well. I know he had a good national championship game when they played against Montana earlier in the fall. Obviously, in Montana State right now is one of the gold standards in FCS right now. Toe Sanders, Trillian Sorrell, Keon Washington, Jaheim Singletary coming over from Arkansas. I know he's kind of got some fanfare about him because he's coming from an SEC. He's a former 5-star coming from an SEC program. I currently am not of the impression that he will be in the main rotation as of right now. Just kind of the vibes I get a little bit. If he breaks out and he has a great camp, that's awesome. Obviously. But right now, if I was gonna just come up with a depth chart right now, my guess is he's probably not on the 2 deep. But the potential is obviously there. He's a former 5-star. I mean, there's something there. But he's got to he's got to put it together to make that kind of thing happen. Lots of good talent in this room. Just lots of interesting names here that I think you're going to see a rotation. I think you'll see a good true 2 deep like we saw a lot in the 3-3-5. But I think they'll really lean on David Coffey and maybe Seth Johnson, maybe Keon Washington at that other spot across from him. But I would guess it'll be those 3 and then kind of pick a 4th one. Maybe Tyrone Cotton, maybe Benny Ngoye is backing up David Coffey. That kind of, you have the Iowa State guys on one side and the transfers on the other side. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe something like that, hard to say exactly, but it's a young group. It's a young group, but they've got good size. They've got speed there. You've got some experience that you like. When I see the couple guys that I've gotten the few guys that I've gotten a chance to really like look at some film on, all of them are coming from man coverage schemes. You know, they're none of them are coming from 3-3-5s. They're coming from heavy man coverage schemes, like a nickel scheme, 4-2-5 type of thing.
Yep.
And that's obviously they're like, aside from just youth and speed, scheme fit and scheme familiarity. Because I'm sure this was a lesson that they learned from their Washington State rebuild last year, is that if you don't have to reteach a bunch of scheme to a bunch of guys, you can get to doing the other stuff instead of having to say like, okay, now you got to retrain where you're looking, where your eyes are at, what your keys are on different things. If you don't have to reteach scheme, you can get to the other stuff a lot faster. So scheme familiarity in a not just a rebuild, but like it is a rebuild, but where it's not a multi-year rebuild project like you used to be able to do, because that's just not something you can do in college football anymore. 3-4 year rebuilds like it used to be are like Paul Rhodes did, where you had to build it up over a few years, and obviously that didn't always work out at the end. But that's the kind of project that college football used to be, where you had to build it over multiple years. Don't really have that luxury anymore in college football. It's just not a thing anymore. And Jimmy Rogers has made it very clear in Big 12 media days. He's made it clear multiple times that like, we didn't come here to rebuild. We came here to win right away. And I love that mentality, because the roster says we're here to build for the next couple of years and while we get our feet under ourselves. The mentality says we're going to win now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
yeah, I think that's how you have to as a coach. You can't, you got seniors on your team. They don't
Absolutely.
got a couple of years. So it should be a win now. Now, will it happen? Only we'll see. But yeah, I think that's the mentality you have to have as a coach, and your players, the staff, everybody. We're just not coming here just to just be another game for other people to play. Just because we transfer from another school or coached at another school, you got to come in thinking, hey, I'm coming in. We're coming in to shake everything up. Heck, and in the Big 12, it's been done. We literally saw and played in the Big 12 championship against a team that was quote unquote picked to be last, and they won the conference.
They won the conference.
Now I think their coach had been there for a little bit before that, but all in all, the mentality is there. Hey, you're picked to be last. Luckily it's the preseason vote. But at the end of the year, you gotta throughout the year, you gotta put the work in on the field. And so one thing about I think my dad, I can't remember who said this, but the person you can't see is the person you should be afraid of. So hopefully that's a big thing that's being talked about, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited too. And I think we're going to use that as motivation, being picked last in the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, we're going to use that for motivation. I think Rogers got us going in the right direction. I think we're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're going to be fine.
And this is off script, but I just kind of like Coach Campbell always had that edge. I will never say that he wasn't hungry, because I always, I've been around him, but he given me the early Campbell vibes. Campbell came in hungry. Like, y'all think we're going to be terrible? Well, even in that first year, teams were beating us, but it wasn't by a lot usually. Like it was a dog fight. And I think that kind of, especially as we started to play later on in the year, like, and we were really competing with everybody, it kind of put us in a sense of we're better than what our record says, and it kind of propelled us into that next year, into the year that kind of shaped how this program has kind of, been going ever since, and steady going up. But he's giving me kind of he's hungry. You can just tell, like, even in the media day, he had that look like, nobody's really talking about or caring about us. And you could just kind of tell in the look that he had and everything that he said. He meant everything that he said. And I think he was sending a message. Like, everybody kind of thinks, okay, Iowa State easy dub this year, and I think he's going to use that as fuel, and he's going to let those guys know that ain't nothing going to be easy. Whether you got to come to Ames, neutral site, or we got to go there. It ain't nothing going to be easy. So I like seeing that from him as the head coach, as far as his hunger and his intensity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Before we move on to sorry, go ahead.
I was about to say, and he got a proven track record too, because what he did, I'm telling you, March, you got to watch that Ole Miss game with that Washington State team. What he did to get them boys to come down there and play like that, that's how I know we're gonna be fine.
Washington State arguably played them.
Washington State played Ole Miss better than
Georgia.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely did.
Yeah, they did.
Because I watched, just kind of went back, I think about a month ago, watched the game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ole Miss is a couple plays from losing that game.
Oh, yeah.
So,
big time.
And it was just, Washington State just, at the end, you just don't have enough offensively. But that defense,
the offense was the issue. Yeah.
But that defense they was out there. And again, y'all said they were playing man to man, and they were. And we're talking about a guy that I think Stribling went high in the NFL. Obviously, Trinidad Chambliss and Lacey were really good. They had guys on the perimeter that were really good, and they pretty much held their own. And the thing about Lane Kiffin is people think he's more of an air raid guy. He's really, if you really watch the games, he wants to run the football, and they weren't able to run the football how they want to. So that also with him saying, hey, I want speed. It's not just he just wants fast guys running out there on the perimeter. He still wants size, especially up in that middle. But he wants that speed is also hitting too. And
absolutely,
and they held their own. And so that's something that, when I was watching, I was like, well, and he's more of a defensive guy, centric coach. That's something that that I definitely noticed when I was watching that game.
Yeah, and it's easy to see why Jimmy Rogers coaches with a chip on his shoulder, just as a very just like I gotta prove it guy. When you spend your playing career as like a 5'9", 5'10" linebacker at an FCS school, that's a pretty good way to get a chip on your shoulder and have a prove your doubters wrong mentality. And that's what I do. I think I saw I've seen a few different comments about it too, like especially right here. All of them have something to prove. They're all hungry to do well. Yep. Nobody has any belief in them except themselves. And, there are like tons of guys that are coming up from FCS, coming from D2. You got Cody Jackson, who was at Oklahoma, is now coming and went to FCS, now coming back up and proving that he belongs. You have a lot of people that are here on this team that are there to prove something. And that so you probably will struggle to find a hungrier team to win in college football than Iowa State next season. We'll see if they can put it all together, but the hunger is clearly going to be there.
Yeah, it will be.
Before we move on to the safeties and in our last two position groups here, before we move on, we should say thank yous to our sponsors over at the Iowa Distilling Company down in Cumming, Iowa. Awesome sponsors of CF After Dark have been since we came in back in January. There you go. Round of applause. If you guys have not been over to the distillery down in Cumming, it's just south of Des Moines. It's fantastic. A little bit smaller venue, but it's awesome. They make great cocktails. If you see Kyle running around out there, he's a good hang. The Saints and Sinners apple pie, the Prairie Fire with cinnamon whiskey, Iowa State 1858 vodka, with part of which the proceeds go straight to Iowa State. Absolutely check all them out. They're awesome to work with. They've been an excellent sponsor, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with them going forward too. So let's talk about our safeties. Unfortunately, the crown jewel of this transfer safety class was Braden Alls, and unfortunately he is now out for the season with an ACL injury, and that's tough. But fortunately, you got Drew Sturgis returns. Fortunately, the safety of the even though the front six, front seven of the defense changes quite a bit in terms of responsibilities with the 4-2-5, the back end doesn't change quite. The safeties specifically don't change quite as much. You know, once in a while they'll still be asked to play man coverage more often, but for the most part in the 4-2-5, your back safeties are still going to be back there, kind of patrolling and just keeping stuff in front of them. They'll come up and defend the run here and there. Their their box support responsibilities will not be quite as strenuous as a 3-3-5, where you know in a 3-3-5 the point is you're spilling runs to the outside, so then the safeties come down and make your tackles, which is why you always saw, you know, Bo Freeler and Greg Eisworth and Marcus Neal being the leaders on the team in tackles, because they're coming down to stop that. In a 4-2-5, specifically in run support, they're not coming downhill quite as aggressively in that scheme, because you have more guys up front that can deal with that. You still your pass coverage responsibilities still look fairly similar, but run defense, there's not quite as much on them to become up to the line of scrimmage, which for a guy like Drew Surges is probably welcome for him, as a little bit, you know, he's 203 pounds now, but he spent a lot of his career up to this point being a little bit smaller safety that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily want to just send him full speed into a running back all the time like he had to in the last scheme. You know, he'll be back. I would guess he'll be a starter. He was a starter. You know, he's been at least a spot starter for, I would say, for the last few years. I would guess you'll probably see him in the starting rotation here, along with what now would have been Braden Alls, but now I think the other guy you're going to see start here is Micah Harper, the transfer from Montana and formerly of BYU. Obviously, BYU, good program. Montana, good program. Coming back up. I expect him to be rock solid. I would expect him to be the other, you know, to be probably the free safety back there to Drew Surge's strong safety. I think Micah, well, I don't know. Now that I say it out loud, you might actually have Drew Surges back there, being as that free safety, since he tends to be a little bit more of a ball hawk as a safety back there trying to pick some stuff off. Now you have some other guys in the room there, like a Malcolm Jones, Deron Goodman, that have a chance to play for sure. Cade Matson's back there. Eddie Lemos returns from the last staff. You like your first two guys. You really like this group if you have Braden Alls, who I believe he's like fifth currently, the fifth place all time as far as the active leader for interceptions in the NCAA. I think he had like five or six last year. Obviously, it sucks to lose him. The great thing is you're going to get him back. If it was the 5-5 would just give him an extra year, or you can use the old rules and you get a medical redshirt. Doesn't matter. Either way, he'll be back for 2027, and then he's done. But in the meantime, you've got Harper and Surges. You like those two back there. Beyond them is a little bit more uncertain. And this is why I think, you know, kind of get you guys' take on this. This is where I like part of where I think Willie Breland comes in great here, because you can have him on the field as a linebacker. When you need him to drop back in coverage, you're totally cool with it. And he can be that safety. He can be that third safety whenever you need him to be. Versus and you can take your depth, your Malcolm Jones, your Deron Goodmans and guys like that, and integrate them a little bit and get them more reps to get them more comfortable to build your depth.
Yep, I agree.
Early on.
Yep, and I think Breland can fit. He can fit back there and play too. He can play either or. That's why we love that guy at that position. So yeah, got a Swiss Army knife in that, and I think the front end, the D line, and the linebackers are going to make the job. And the scheme is already making the job easier on the safeties, but with the D line and linebackers we got, I think we'll make their job a little bit more easier this year too, for sure. Mm-hmm. And they're young. They number two guys, but everybody getting their feet wet. I think probably about third, fourth game they'll be coming into their own, and that'll be right time for them to start doing their thing, making plays.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is the depth in this room is young. You've got Matthew McLean's a true freshman, Tatum Duncan is a true freshman, Brady Hummel is a true freshman, Demarius Russell's a redshirt freshman, Brody Miller is a redshirt freshman. You've got lots of young guys in this room behind, but the nice thing is you do have some veterans up top that have played a ton of football, and we at that safety spot, I mean, athleticism and all that is great. Having a brain back there is what you need. I mean, you need a guy back there that can process, that can read what's going on, that knows where to keep his eyes and knows when to stick around, when to go plaster his guy on a scramble drill type of thing. Having smart players back there is as important as anything. And when you have guys that have played as much football as Drew Sturgis and Michael Harper, that makes you feel better knowing that they're going to be back there and they're going to make the right decision.
Totally correct.
Let's move on to our specialists. Obviously, superstar of the team, Kyle Conradi, winner of 2 Cyhawk games, is back. The Lamont, Iowa / Dubuque, Iowa native returns from I know the old staff wanted him, but he stuck around. We all love him. He is already a cult hero among Cyclone fans and soon to be of legend status if he continues to be as good as he is. I don't know that there's a lot to say about Kyle Conradi other than he's fucking awesome.
Great.
There's not much really else to say. He's he hit that 63-yarder last year. Obviously he hits walk-off field goals. He was hurt a little bit last year, but assuming he stays healthy this year, you expect him to be one of the best kickers in college football and be a Groza Award semifinalist, that kind of caliber. Like I said, not a lot to talk about there. Plenty you like to talk about because he's awesome. But the great thing about when you have a good kicker is when there's not much to talk about. He's just good. He just shows up and he's just good.
That's simple.
Yep. What Marchie? What's your number one advice for kickers that you always have?
Don't fuck up.
Don't fuck up.
Don't fuck
That's
up.
exactly right.
Trust me, the last 2 times I done played Iowa, what do you think has been running? And Kyle Conradi's up the kick. All I've been saying is, don't fuck up.
Don't fuck up.
Hey, you for 2, man.
Hey,
so
yeah, and that's
so.
The best trait your kicker can possibly have is a guy that doesn't fuck up.
Yeah.
Best trait you can have.
It's true.
Hey man, just please.
Yeah. Punter is a little bit less clear. My guess right now is you're probably looking at Ethan Gurney. I think. He's a true freshman, but he's coming over from Australia. Australia, noted place where they make good punters. Obviously, Iowa State's last Aussie punter, little bit shakier. But, generally speaking, Australia does a really nice job putting out good specialists, good kickers, punters.
They do.
I would expect him to be in that same vein. So I think Ethan Gurney will be there. Jonah DuPont is the other punter in the room. I'll confess, I don't know anything about Jonah DuPont. No offense, that is not a shot against Jonah DuPont. He's the second punter on the team. What do you want me to do? One of those 2 guys will win it out. I think it'll be Ethan Gurney. Okay, so now an interesting question here because it's not a dedicated position. What do you do with punt and kick returner? Obviously, Aiden Floor and Cam Petaway are weapons. No question about it.
Yep.
However, running back is one of the outside of maybe safety, running back is one of the it's one of the position groups on the team that you are most concerned about the depth. Now, if one of them gets hurt, it's not great, but you can probably survive it. Mm-hmm. If both of them get hurt, you're really hoping River Peppers is healthy at that point. Yeah. How much risk reward do you see in sending those guys out there for kicks and punts? I don't think you would have one of them do both things. I think you would have pick one for one and one for the other if you're going to do that. But do you guys have any concerns about sending one of those guys out there for let's say punt return or even, or kick return, I guess. Do you have concerns about that, durability wise, or do you just say go out there and just do it and, injuries happen type of thing?
We try. Oh, you got it, March.
Yeah, I'm not too much worried about it. I think, hey, you take. I would assume Aiden would probably be the punt returner.
Probably.
And then, pet away, or maybe somebody else comes in, DBs.
Cody Jackson would theoretically be a candidate back there.
Yeah, that can, take kickoff returns and stuff like that. But I don't think you can go into a situation like, we are thin at running back, but at the end of the day, we got to win football games. And if they are the best guys that, help us win, then we're just going to have to deal with whatever comes with that. It is what it is. I do think, though, I'm assuming, and I feel like we should be able to find some guys that can kick return. I'm not saying it's an easy position, because it's not, but at the same time, if we're recruiting a lot of this speed and athletes, we should at least find somebody to be able to spare us a couple kickoff returns, or maybe even now punt return. In my opinion, that's a little bit different. That's a lot more trust, because you got to be able to catch the punt. So I don't think that changes at all. I think probably finding a quality backup would be the challenge. But kickoff return, I'm not really too worried about that.
Yeah. Same. We're trying to win football games. All hands on deck. Now we can be creative with it. Like if I know Flores out there on kick return, I let the other back start the drive off. Like little stuff like that. Yeah. But besides that, I think all of them can be.
The thing I would want to do, I want to avoid though, the thing I would want to avoid, because if you remember, like the middle, especially the middle chunk of that Campbell era, they just didn't try to return anything, punt or kick. They just didn't bother with it.
Yeah.
In my mind, if you are scared enough of the concern about Flora or Petaway getting hurt that you start fair catching everything, or that you just don't bother returning kicks or something like that, then don't put them back there. Find somebody else to do it. Like, to me, if you're gonna put them back there, let them do their thing. Like let them return shit. Like let Cam Petaway, take one a yard into the end zone and let him take it and go and see what happens, type of thing. Versus like just fair catching everything. Now I realize the new fair catch rule, where it's anything inside the 20, fair caught just goes to the 25. I get that that's really enticing, as far as just like we have a lot of leeway for, we don't have to take anything we don't love. But to me, if you're worried about it at all, just put somebody else back there and let them do their thing. Like there's no reason to have those two back there if you're not going to use them. Like if you're not going to use them, just don't even have them on the field. Just put somebody back there that you are comfortable with using and letting them return.
I agree.
That's how I would approach it. Like there's no reason to put them out there if you're going to play scared.
Yeah. I've never been with fair catching, because you never know. You could take it and you could be on their opposite. You could start the ball from their opposite side of the field. I just. To me, you just can't live you can't play this game fearing something, like stuff is going to happen this year. It is what it is. It's already written. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So you can't go out there and play this game of football and be living in fear and worried about, well, if this could happen now. You can't be dumb and just not have any type of plan. Stuff like that is going to happen. You got to have some sort of plan or something to kind of help out with that if it does happen. But hopefully the coaching staff, and I don't think they are, just because of the, Coach Rogers and how he's just been talking and his mentality. And it seems like the players, even at media day, just can't live in fear. You got to go out there, you got to play. And if you can take kickoff returns, then take them.
And for the record, I don't see Jimmy Rogers being the kind of guy that would play scared. I think if they're going to send him out there, they're going to do something. Yeah.
Right.
This does not, he does not give me any remote impression of a coach that wants to play conservative, that wants to lean conservative. Like, I don't think that we're going to see, I'm hoping, and I think we're going to see finally the death of the end of half prevent defense that we saw, that just every time gave up a score right before half.
Oh yeah,
every damn time, and it just drove me nuts. I think we potentially are going to see that be gone, and I am all for that. And especially I love a team just in general being aggressive as possible on defense and special teams. When you know you've got things taken care of on defense and special teams, you feel really good about it. You've got lots of playmakers, lots of athletes, lots of speed. You've got all that taken care of. Be as aggressive as you can and try to generate short fields, try to generate turnovers, try to generate negative plays when you're on defense, that type of thing. And then that gives your offense all as much help as it could possibly need. Because I think we all know that we've talked about for the first hour of the show how much we like Jalen Rayner. We like a lot of the athletes around this team on this offense. It's going to take a little bit of time for them to gel, to get into a rhythm, to kind of just get going. It's going to take a little bit of time, and that's okay. But the more help that you can give them with short fields and just more possessions in general, the better. That's going to help you out in the long run. So I love, if you take it out and if you take let's say you return every kick and most of them end up around the 20-25 yard line, around the 25 or 30 yard line or something like that. For every two that end up at the 18 yard line, if you can get one that ends up at the 40 or the 50, that's huge. That's huge. Especially when you got Kyle Conradi, where you can plunk that ball at midfield and he can just can it from there. Sure. Because he's an alien, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. If you can get to the 40 yard line, you basically have an automatic 3 points on the board. If you get a short field and you can start at your own 40 or you start at midfield or something like that, that's basically 3 points just on the board. Mm-hmm. Done. And it makes the offense's job so much easier. Way easier. And when you don't have to rely on one unit to win you the game all the time, it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
So all right. Well, I think that's going to about wrap her up for our very in-depth roster breakdown and depth position and depth chart projections. You guys got any thoughts you want to talk about a little bit before we wrap her up?
No, I think that's good.
Yeah, I think it's solid.
Marchie's had 6 months. Marchie's had almost 7.5 months to sit on it, and you got no words, huh, March?
Yeah, nothing. I'm surprised.
Well, I mean, yeah, I have nothing. I don't know. Excited for the season. This is probably one of my favorite seasons to kind of just looking forward to what's going to happen.
I'm right there with you.
Since we've been on the pod, Levi,
I'm right there with
you. Maybe besides the year going into the year we lost to Arizona State in the Big 12 title game.
Yeah.
I was excited that year, but I don't think I was even as excited as I am now, just because, it's new regime. Obviously, AD's gone now, so that's another thing. With also Coach Campbell leaving and stuff like that. And it also makes me wonder, was that said, a little earlier than, maybe we knew about and kind of helped with him leaving. But with that being said, I'm glad to have Coach Rogers. And again, it looks like he's bringing some fire back. Again, not saying that it was gone or anything, because Coach Campbell's my boy still.
See, man.
But at the same time, new hunger is good, and I'm excited about this team and what they can and will do for this season.
Absolutely. Jordan, you got anything?
Marchie said it all, but I'm super excited for the season, man, because I know it's going to be a process. I know we're going to peak. Mm-hmm. Just don't know when, but we're going to hit a peak, and we're going to be one of the most explosive teams in the Big 12. But
I'm right there with you. That I think this is going to be the most fun I've had watching a Cyclone defense in a long time. I think the defense is going to be fun. I think the speed everywhere is going to be fun. I think Jalen Raynor's fun. And like I said, I don't know if we're going to end up 5-7 or 8-4. I don't know where we're going to end up. There's a wide range of things that can go. But what I do know is I'm really excited to find out. I can honestly say that I haven't been this excited to just see what happens going into a season than in a long time. There's been other seasons in the past where we're like, 2021 obviously didn't end up well, but we went into that season like, oh, this could be a playoff team. This is all this, whatever. We were excited, but there was always still that lingering thought, just the Iowa State fan of me in the back of my head. It's like, well, what if it goes wrong and this doesn't work out type of thing? And it didn't work out. Yeah. And it was, that was a disappointing year. And, there's other years, obviously 2024 was fun. 2024, though, they even still they still did better than any of us thought that they were going to do type of thing. We thought they'd be good, but I don't think we knew that they'd be 11-2. And we thought, last year there was a chance for them to take a step forward, and they had obviously tons and tons of injury problems and all this or whatever. But a lot of those were expectations. Those were talent, but we also had lots of expectations, which is sometimes can be difficult to manage. This year, you get to go in with no expectations. There's no expectation for anything. All you get to the only thing required of any Cyclone fan showing up to the stadium this fall is to go there and have fun cheering on the Cyclones. That's it. There's no pressure. There's nothing. You just show up and we can also drink beer. Drink beer at the stadium. And you know what? That the first game we go out, we're gonna go out there against SEMO, and I'm gonna probably cry the first time.
We're gonna be sweating.
It's gonna be hot as shit. But that first time we get a sack or that first pick or that first touchdown, I'm gonna lose my shit. It's gonna be so much fun, and I'm gonna party like we just won the goddamn Super Bowl right after that game. I don't care if we win. I don't care if we win 55-10 or we win 17 or we win 14-10. I don't care. I'm gonna party my ass off after that game because it's gonna be good fun to see the Cyclones out on the football field at Jack Trice Stadium playing fun football. That's where I'm at.
I'm with you.
Again, no pressure. Just go out there and play.
Have fun. Go out, play. See what you can do. And we're in the watching. And Jordan hit on too. Watching the growth of the season is going to be so much fun to watch. To see what they look like on the first game, what they look like when Utah comes to town in September. To see what they look like when they go on the road to BYU. What they look like, and then what they look like when Kansas State comes to town for Farmageddon to close out the regular season. And seeing the growth from game 1 to game 12 is going to be so much fun to watch.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All righty. Well, we will finally wrap up after 2 hours. We will wrap up this first episode of Down the Pipe of the 2026 football season. For Jordan Harris and Marchie Murdoch, I'm Levi Stevenson. This has been Down the Pipe, presented by the Iowa Distilling Company. We will be back again next week for the next part of our preseason predictions and previews. We're going to start next week with part 1 of our opponent preview. So we'll be talking for the first 3 games of the season, and then so we break it up into quarters: 3 games, 3 games, 3 games, 3 games. So first up next week will be the first 3 games of the season: SEMO, Iowa, and then Bowling Green. So again, Jordan Harris, Marchie Murdoch, Levi Stevenson. We'll be out. We'll be back again next week. See you later, everybody.